Hey everyone, welcome. Since the last video, Getting Creative, where I talked about that I had too much time on my hands, that changed when I decided I wanted to quit my job. Yeah, I told my employer that I stop working for him as for the 1st of June, so next month. And yeah, with that, things got crazy. It's been really busy at the store, at the shop, and so I've been working 6 days a week since then. So yeah, I have too little time on my hands now, but that's all right. So I got a new job, a challenging one, and yeah, I'm very excited to get started with that. So that's the biggest news. Yeah, in this video I'm gonna talk about some things I did for the last couple of weeks. Obviously I didn't record any of it, but it kept me busy nonetheless. So we're gonna talk about that. The second one is the Open Media Vault server I've been running on my Gen 8 microserver from HP. That's my backup service. Most important data from my Unraid server is copied with rclone to my Gen 8. And since I had the green drives as spare drives now, I thought, well, if I install those 2 terabyte drives in my Gen 8 server and configure them in a RAID 5 config, so 3 times 2 terabyte, I will have an effective 4 terabytes for backup, so I can back up more stuff to that server. And that's maybe necessary because I extended the array on the Unraid server as well. So then I added a 4th 2 terabyte drive to my Gen 8 as well. So 4 2 terabyte drives are in there, but that 4th hard drive is still reserved for data storage for virtual machines, for FreeNAS for example. Videos that I'm planning for the future now because I have some more important things to do at the moment. So that's for the Open Media Vault server, so that's running pretty much, yeah, like it should. Then the third thing that gave me a bit of a headache, the ProLine server I did 2 videos on. First one was upgrading the server from a friend of mine, the 1U rack mount server. With 2 CPUs, 2 Xeon CPUs, 128 gigabytes of RAM, a terabyte NVMe drive and 2 8 terabyte hard drives. Last week I wanted to continue with that server and see what else we could do with it, because the friend said, well, I have a third 8 terabyte drive and I would like a RAID 5 config with that, so that he had an effective 16 terabytes at his disposal for data storage. Said, well, that's not a problem. Okay, can we add a caching SSD as well, because we only have a data store now. So in Open Media Vault that was a no-go for me. He wanted also, by the way, a mirrored SSD config, a mirrored cache config. So if one cache drive fails, the other one would take over. At the moment we are still looking for some options with that, but I will get to that in a bit. So I said to him, well, yeah, sure, not a problem. We can do that, but that server had 6 internal SATA ports. 4 of those ports are for the front base of that server, and then yeah, we had 2 extra ports. So we connected 2 SSDs to that port, and Open Media Vault was recognizing the SSDs, but we didn't want to go with Open Media Vault in this particular setup with the caching SSD and all sorts of tinkering with that. So I wanted to try FreeNAS for him on that server, and of course we started with a virtual machine on that. But FreeNAS wasn't recognizing the SSDs, only the hard drives. So I found that a bit strange, since the SSDs were recognized by Open Media Vault and the hard drives as well. Okay, so then I wanted to tinker some more with that and maybe try some other systems, and then ESXi decided that it wouldn't start up anymore after a reboot. And after some tinkering with that and running some diagnostics, we came to the conclusion that the verbatim USB 3.0 USB drive we used in the second video for the setup was already failing on us. So it was not reliable, so I used a new USB stick. We did a new config of ESXi, imported the VMs, and yeah, we're good to go. And that works pretty well till now, so there's not a problem with that. So, but that took some time as well to figure out that the USB drive was already failing, because it's a new USB drive. So yeah, it can happen. But when I wanted to install ESXi on the new USB thumb drive, I discovered that the SSDs weren't recognized by ESXi setup either. So I came to the conclusion that, well, maybe there is something wrong with these SATA ports on this motherboard, or it's not intended to be used in this way. because it only has 4 drive bays. So where would you use the other 2 SATA ports for? It doesn't have an optical disk unit or space for that even. So I tried the ports in legacy mode. That's basically IDE mode, a parallel ATA. And after that I saw that it was divided up to 1x4 and 1x2 configuration. So basically we came to the conclusion that the configuration as it was now, with the NVMe drive, a couple of hard drives and 2 CPUs, 128 gigabytes of RAM, fun stuff, but it was basically at the max capacity of this server. It's an older server, an older ProLiant server. So yeah, he called me a couple of days ago, last week or so, and he said, well, I still have a Gen 8 server from HP. Maybe we can use that one. I said, sure, bring it along and we'll see what we can do with that. And that's this one. Yeah, let me get a bit more room. So it's a Gen 8, basically from, of course, the same generation as the microserver I have myself. And this one has the same CPU even. It's an Intel Xeon E3 1220 V2. So the same CPU, even the same amount of RAM, 3 times 4 gigabytes, so 12 gigabytes in total. In my microserver I have 1.8 and 1.4 gigabyte module. It has 4 drive bays in the front, as you can see, and yeah, you can see the janky setup here. I did. Well, I have to wait till these 2 hard drive brackets arrive. Until then, I want to get started with the server, so I just plugged in the hard drives like this. So we have 3 8TB drives in the front here and a 16 gigabyte SSD as well. Then we have the janky setup inside. Another 1, 2, 3 SSDs, 2 Samsung 128 gigabyte SSDs and also 1 16 gigabyte SSD. And one 16 gigabyte SSD is on this D-Lock SATA controller and one 16 gigabyte SSD is on the motherboard. So this motherboard has a SAS connector for the drive bays, for the 4 hard drives, and another 2 SATA ports on the motherboard itself. So one of those 16 gigabytes is on the controller. Same goes for the Samsung SSD. So one is on the motherboard and one is on the controller. And the idea was that we wanted to run a NAS OS on the 16 gigabyte SSDs in a mirrored configuration like FreeNAS. With the setup you can just select 2 SSDs and it will install on those SSDs. And then use the 3x 8 terabytes in a RAID 5 configuration, or in this case a RAID C1 configuration for FreeNAS. And then we have the 2x 128 gigabyte SSDs for cache. At least that was the idea, until I found out that, well, maybe the performance will even go down for him with caching SSDs, because it only has 12 gigabytes of RAM. And for FreeNAS and a caching setup, I've read, because I don't have that much experience with FreeNAS, I read that it could backfire on you. You will need way more RAM with that, and the use case isn't really suitable for a caching SSD in this case, because he only wants to store movies, music and all that kind of stuff on this server. So he wants to use this as his NAS, and he wants to use the Gen 8 server as a virtualization server. So I think that's a really nice balance. Maybe upgrade the RAM a little bit more. 16 gigabytes more than enough for a NAS solution. But yeah, FreeNAS is a bit of a thing. Because it works differently with cache than, for example, unrated does. So I'm still yeah, looking into that, what would be the best solution for him. He discussed it with another friend as well, and let's see what he has to say about this. And it could be anything, but for this setup there will be a video coming up, and maybe an experience video, I don't know. We're still working on this. So that's for the Gen 8 server. And let me get it out of the way. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the server rack chassis mount thing for in the pantry. Yeah, I was talking about it since December last year, and well, that still hasn't changed, but I hadn't bought anything myself, or they were too big or too deep, and it wouldn't fit in our small pantry. And for my birthday, a friend gave me this present. You see in the video now. Yeah, it's a rack mount chassis, and this is, I believe, 11 or 12U. It weighs 45 kilograms, so it's quite massive. I'm still trying to figure out how it all goes together. The idea for this is it will be set up in the pantry, so a bigger rack mount chassis simply wouldn't fit in our pantry. My friend knew that because I gave him the dimensions of our pantry, and he said, well, I have something for you, check it out. I will do a video about the server chassis, but first I had to order the rails for the Shenbro server. The case isn't sold anymore, at least not in the Netherlands. So yeah, getting some rails for a chassis like that, a server chassis, is a bit of a challenge. Yeah, I couldn't find them on eBay, or they had ridiculously high shipping costs. So yeah, I wasn't willing to pay 30 euros for shipping for the rails. The shipping would be more expensive than the rails itself. So eventually last night I found some rails. These are the rails I ordered. Just have to wait till those come in, and then we can start with the actual setup. So getting the pantry empty, all the stuff out, install the rack mount chassis, then install our Shenbro server. Maybe on top of that the Linksys switch. It's also a rack mount switch. And yeah, we can expand it a little bit more in the future. So I'm very much looking forward to get started with that. We'll do a video about that, as well as the Gen 8 server we have here. We'll do a video about that as well. Most things I did, I also built a gaming PC, yeah, on the fly, but I couldn't do videos about that because it was in a limited time span, and recording a video with that, it just takes way more time. So all the things I did now, that there was no room for recording any of it, so that's why, yeah, this video. So yeah, with that being said, I will leave the video this. If you have any comments, suggestions, maybe some advice, you can leave them down in the comment section. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!